Rabbi Dr. Abraham Levy, OBE, encomienda de la Orden del Mérito Civil. Born in Gibraltar in 1939, he was evacuated to Madeira during the war, and at 12 years old went to Carmel College in England. He went on to join Jews College, and at 17 was appointed student Chazan at Lauderdale Road. He met my mother at Holland Park Synagogue in 1962, and as they say, the rest is history. A man of intellect and humanity, a proud Jew and Englishman whose passion in life was to make Jews better Jews. He coined the phrase, England has been good to the Jews, and the Jews have been good to England. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, a close friend and colleague of my father, described him as one of the great spiritual leaders and institution builders of Anglo Jewry, who reminded us how much the Spanish and Portuguese tradition has to teach us about the combination of humanity and spirituality, openness and faith. My father gave his first sermon at Lauderdale Road Synagogue on Shabbat Chanukah in 1960. So him passing away on Shabbat Chanukah, Rosh Chodesh, 62 years later, is quite remarkable and has much significance that others, I'm sure, will speak about. Last year, my father used to come to us on most nights of Chanukah to light the menorah. Consequently, he had many oils left over. This year he was unable to leave his house on Chanukah, so we used those remaining oils. It was very coincidental that these ran out on Friday night, the 6th night, which was the last night we were able to light for him. Daddy encouraged Jewish education and practice at so many levels, such as the Hebrew classes at Lauderdale Road, that under his tenure flourished and led him to the understanding that for the Jewish community to thrive locally, he had to build a school. The establishment of the Young Jewish Leadership Institute. But the building of Naima JPS was undoubtedly the singly most important project of his life and the one he was proudest of. The building of the Central London Mikveh, Daddy was emphatic that this had to remain of the highest quality, like a spa, and place the ongoing responsibility firmly in Shan's hands. And the establishment of the Semicha and Dayanut programs with the Montefiore Endowment. As you can imagine, I have had thousands of messages and calls in the last 36 hours. But there are two themes that have resonated with me strongly. The first is from various parents at the school, explaining that their young kids are so sad. And a few went as far as saying inconsolable and devastated. The second is multiple congregants who have said that my father was their leader and supported and guided them at critical and integral points in their life. For that they loved him and will really miss him. If one's passing causes a young child who's not a relative to be inconsolable and brings so many to appreciate his actions after so many years, you really have had a massive impact on the world. My father was a source of inspiration to so many of the Naima kids, many of whom are here today. And they all remember the iconic image of him kneeling down on the floor to speak directly to each one of the children at their level. In the community, his positioning was sensitive and sophisticated. He managed to achieve things that others couldn't. One example that comes to mind is on the 350th anniversary of the Jews' resettlement in Great Britain. He arranged a civic service at Bevis Marks to include all sides of British Jewry, from the irreligious to the Haredi, in the presence of Tony Blair. One leading progressive rabbi congratulated him on a completely wonderful event, and everyone felt so included and so welcome. It was done with such style and grace. And one leading Haredi rabbi said it was a great Kiddush Hashem, and he believed that only the Sephardi community could have pulled the different strands of Anglo Jewry together as he did on that day. My father was also passionate about his interfaith work, which brought him his OBE in 2004, and I believe his private lunch with the Queen, where he was so excited to come back and tell us that the Queen fed the corgis from the table. From there he determined that etiquette allows him to feed our dog Rocky from the table. Rocky would religiously sit on the floor next to Dad on Shabbat to get a constant flow of halal. He never judged anyone's level of observance. He would always embrace and include those that many others wouldn't. And his biggest joy was to bring light, direction and purpose into the life of so many young pupils. When the pupils he inspired went on to continue his teaching, that validated all he was doing. So many have embraced Judaism and increased their level of observance entirely because of my father. Many have referred to my father as their mentor, but I was extremely fortunate to have that on tap. I sought his counsel multiple times a day, just to get his advice on my approach and path to whatever I was working on at the time. And when he got more frail in his last few months, I sorely missed his considered calm problem-solving advice. Even a few weeks ago, when I was asked to assist with a recommendation on his behalf, he was razor sharp in pinpointing the one slightly contentious point that he elegantly rephrased. My father never complained through his illness. When any NHS caregiver or other visitor came to see him and inquired as to how he was, his answer would always be, "Thank God, others far worse than me." They would be offered a drink and often left with a copy of his book. His cup was always half full, never half empty, and he would always teach me, it's better to try and fail than fail to try. I would like to say a special thank you to all of you that so kindly and quickly took on the mitzvah Shmirah to look after my father prior to the funeral. At home, my father was cared for in the last couple of years by Vinesh, his carer. We owe him an enormous debt of gratitude for the gentle and loving care he gave. Vinesh, you gave him dignity and comfort. No request was too much or too regular. You showed my father love and compassion and always took his needs before your own. I also want to mention his doctor, Nemi, who took care of every aspect of his well-being with love and compassion. There are so many others I would like to mention who visit him regularly at home. You kept him engaged and motivated. He loved all your visits. My father was a giant in Anglo Jewry, and some have described him as a legend and a leader. More often than not, I'm always introduced as Rabbi Levy's son. He was my father, and I'm so proud to call him my father. Unfortunately, my parents weren't blessed with having lots of kids, but when my children came along, my parents were overjoyed. My father couldn't have been a prouder grandparent, loving each one of his grandchildren, with their very own special qualities and achievements, unconditionally. But I really do have to mention Dan. His willing, continual compassion and care for his abuelo in his later years when he was frail. Today we say farewell to a great man on his way to heaven, for a life well lived. Please God, we should all be able to have that said about us. You will now be at peace with Mummy, who we all miss. You were a wonderful father, and I love you. I tried to do whatever I could to support you, but for those areas where I failed, I want to publicly ask you for Mechila. I will really miss your guidance to keep me on a non-confrontational path and our daily chats. Lastly, as I mentioned earlier, my father was passionate about making Jews better Jews. His passing is a loss to so many in the community, so to elevate my father's neshama, soul, can I ask you all take on one extra mitzvah in his honor, whatever it is you feel appropriate, but just one more thing that you didn't do before.
מוריי ורבותיי, מכובדי כולם. לשבת ראש חודש, the 6th day of Hanukkah, הרב רבי אברהם ויצחק הלוי returned his precious soul, his neshama kedusha, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Almighty. Today we feel a great loss. I hope you'll allow me to express my own loss as much as everybody's. I lost a teacher, a mentor, and a friend. But we also have an opportunity to celebrate a full life of achievement. We celebrate the life of a great rabbi, a great man who dreamt big dreams and lived to see his dreams come true. Rabbi Levi would say, any Jew trying to be better is a good Jew. By his own measure, Rabbi Abraham Levi was a very good Jew indeed. He loved our glorious tradition, prayers and songs that we have been employed and enjoyed for centuries in our communities all over the world. Rabbi Levi dedicated a large part of his life to teach them and seeing them being taught. When he opened JPS school, he gave me a mission, and that mission to make sure that the children rehearse their tefillah properly with ta'amim. And I'm glad to say that they're still thriving. Please God, they'll go from strength to strength. Rabbi Levi and his beloved Estelle, a perk of his stint as a rabbi for a short while in Holland Park Synagogue, were always closely in touch with their family in Gibraltar and London. Rabbi Levi and Estelle bound their son Julian and shunned their daughter-in-law and their grandchildren into their family and its tradition. Sean, you were as a daughter that never had. He often told me of his pleasure he had knowing and bonding with your family. Julian and Sean, you brought them the immense joy of grandparenthood. And the grandchildren changed Rabbi Levi and Estelle's life, deepening their appreciation of the continuity and change that makes up life, as well as deepening the family feelings for the state of Israel. There is nothing like a brave grandson and a fighting unit to concentrate the mind. Dearest family, Julian, James, Lolly, Sean, Avi, Jamie, Rachel, and Daniel. We share your pain, but we also share your pride. And thank you for sharing him with our communities and the wider Jewish community. The outpouring of sympathy, affection, and love from all over the world is astounding. Speaking of family, I must mention that Rabbi Levi and Estelle readily shared their family with the communities. The family home was open to many, and many faced the challenge of touching the bread of the Hamotzi without upsetting Estelle's cutlery and wine glasses. Speaking about that table, which was immaculately prepared for Shabbatot and Chagim, they really fulfilled the mitzvah of Ze Eli ve'Ambehu. This is my God, I will beautify him. How do we beautify God? By performing our mitzvot in the best possible way. The best talit, the best tefillin, the best sukkah. Rabbi Levi, as a rabbi, saw that the Jewish continuity could never be just about adding more and more beautiful, luxurious buildings. It requires institutions that meet human needs and give meaning to life. That's why his top priority was to work hard and build the school to give the children the start they need. And that way, we can ensure continuity. I remember, as Julian said, Rabbi Lord Sachs Zatzal describing Rabbi Levi as institution builder. Without a project, Rabbi Levi was as restless as Sherlock Holmes without cases. With a project, he was tireless. Rabbi Levi particularly worked towards linking and bridging everyday life with the life of spirituality. Jewish leaders in medieval Spain moved in the everyday world and advised kings, and these leaders were an inspiration to Rabbi Levi. Of course, we heard about Naima JPS. I used to describe the school to Rabbi Levi as the jewel in the crown, and he will of course agree with me. There, this wonderful place gave secular education and Jewish education to hundreds, maybe even thousands of children, and helped many to academic and professional achievement. Here, I'd like to share with you a beautiful verse when Yehuda appeals passionately to Yosef, not knowing that he is his brother, to release Benjamin. And he said to him, "Ki ech e'ele el avi ve'hana'ar inenu iti." How can I go up to my father? And the lad is not with me. Avi. And this verse, Chachamim tell us, it's Avihu Shebashamayim. Rabbi Levi, in a way, he's saying, how can I go up to meet the Almighty without ensuring that I have done my best for our children and to secure the future? Moshe said to Pharaoh when he told him, Mi v'mi ha'olchim, who is going to go with you? He said, B'na'arenu v'stanenu, with our children and our elders, because we can't go only with our elders. Without the children, we have no future. Of course, the school motto emphasizes its inclusivity. חנוך הנער על פי דרכו. גם כי יסכים לא יסור ממנה. Teach a child according to his ways. Even when he is older, he will not deviate from it. Each child according to its capability. We heard Julian telling us about this moving scene. Rabbi Elia would sit on the floor and speak to the children like he's one of them. That's why he was so loved by all the children, the teachers, and all of us together. You see, Rabbi Elia was the honorary principal and the spiritual head of the school, looked after the spiritual need. Julian was and is the school's financial head and fed the school's body. The school with its many staff, its salaries, and its expenses is a hungry beast. But with Rabbi Elia and Julian and many generous friends, the school never went hungry or homeless. Rabbi Elia, the builder, recruited many others to help. We give special thanks to the Salem Mikveh, the Fatal Sukkah, and the Shasha Library, and of course, the Montefiore Endowment, training rabbis and giving a chance to youngsters to spend a gap year in Eretz Israel in the Yeshiva, and the most ambitiously for training Dayanim. Over the years, Rabbi Elia's work in his projects led to many ceremonial events, public speeches, and dinners. Rabbi Elia addressed Israel's chief rabbis, British royals, and prime ministers, and presidents of the state of Israel. As a leader of our community, Rabbi Elia always did us proud. He would rise to any occasion and elevate any occasion by linking our everyday lives with his grasp of the transcendent. And on a personal note, I knew Rabbi Elia from the age of 15. And even then, as a Montefiore College student, he would encourage us to enter the rabbinate with some limited success. He encouraged me to teach in the classes, then became the youth leader for Lauderdale Road and Holland Park. They had to share me, obviously. I was expensive. No, I wasn't. Not at all. Later, a Chazan Reverend. I didn't like the title Reverend. Rabbi Elia said to me, you can do something about it, become a rabbi. So he did, encouraged me to become a rabbi. I am immensely grateful. I have a karata tov. For 35 years, we took turns to prepare the parasha each week. One would rehearse before the other, while the other listened to mistakes of word or tune. Sharing that much Torah, that's very special. So Rabbi Elia had a special role in the world, a special role in my life, a special role in all our lives. He lived and passed on a very special man. Rabbi Elia touched thousands of lives. We accompanied him in his last journey, but his soul, spirit, and influence will remain with us for many generations. May his dear soul be bound up in the everlasting bond of life. Please God, he be a militz yosher liklal Israel. May his memory be a blessing to his dear family, our congregation, and the Jewish world. Amen.
Amen.